Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I want to discuss the Ultimatum mechanic. A lot of us have spent a lot of time with it now, and I think it's finally time to give a little bit of feedback and, reflect on how the mechanic interacts with the game moving forward. So I would love to drum up a bit of a conversation in the comments or wherever this gets posted, because I think that that's really healthy for the game. And moving forward, as someone who develops stuff myself at work, feedback is king, and having it there is exactly what we want. Grinding Gear has said many times before that they like feedback and not solutions, so here is my feedback. Let's get into it. So we're going to be talking the Ultimatum mechanic, full stop. We're not going to be talking, any of the rebalance to the loot or anything like that, just the mechanic, because I think that's what the feedback needs to be on and not anything else. So the Ultimatum mechanic, we start out encountering it at Twilight Strand, and honestly, when my experience, throughout the acts 1 to 10, it was a complete blast. They nailed it all the way from Twilight Strand to Blood Aqueduct and beyond. They did really make sure that the risk reward factor was there. The rewards felt appropriate. You were getting stuff like well itemized rares. When you're leveling through the story, that is an absolute godsend. You can barely find a rare sometimes, and then getting an itemized one, oh hell yeah, that is so damn good, and they completely nailed that. And I really enjoyed the Ultimatum mechanic in the story. In addition to that, the risk reward felt real. Your character was fairly, kind of undergeared, and every single wave that you took made it significantly and noticeably harder. Every modifier you had, because you couldn't clear the whole screen, was impactful. You couldn't just take Ruin 3 times. You had to consider it and measure your options, and you were always looking at the loot window, at least I was, and you were never thinking you were going to max that Ultimatum out. And that's what really made the mechanic come alive for me, and I was sure back then that this mechanic was going to be one of my favorite. But anyway, fast forward. Let's do early mapping now. So early mapping is generally in the whites and the yellows. Again, it retains its risk-reward mentality. You're getting good rewards. You're getting stuff like, 1 or 2 Delirium Orb maps. You're getting stacks of Chaos Orbs. You're getting maybe some good uniques which your build might need, or you can sell to other players. You're also getting good itemized rares, which are really important early on. Maybe you get a good wand and you're playing like a trapper or a miner. That's insane. And you really did get that feeling of risk reward still. You would always be looking at what's on the table, and it would be like that high stakes poker game, which the league mechanic promised it would be. So you're always wondering, should I go in? Should I continue to wager? Should I cash out here? There was a bit of strategy to it. And in addition to that, the mods continued to be relevant. You were still learning them, and your character wasn't well equipped enough to trivialize pretty much any of them, I don't imagine, at this point. All right, fast forward to mid mapping. Basically the reds, the high reds, the mid reds, T14, T13, that kind of area like that. People start running into sustain issues. That is another topic. But overall, I think that we still have the spirit of the league alive at this point. You may be getting your character to a point where you can start to trivialize mechanics, like for example the cloud, the fart cloud, ruin. If you're some sort of heavy AoE build or cold based build, you can start to trivialize ruin. People are starting to learn that they can just run around in circles and kite stuff. And we're also learning that we don't like stone circles at this point, I imagine. At least I was. That was my experience. So overall, I think the mechanic is still very fun at this point. I think it's really engaging. You're still very challenged, and you're always still looking at the risk reward. And the reason for this is because most builds are still kind of below that sixth wave threshold. No one's maxing out their ultimatums yet. You don't see too many people just running in and smashing it over and over again, because we're not at that point yet. The rewards continue to be good. You're getting really high stacks of chaos. Maybe you're getting exalted shards. Maybe you're getting other stuff, which is really rewarding. And overall, I never felt like I wanted to skip an ultimatum at this point. I felt like it was good currency and it was worth my time. All right, moving on to the end game. So the end game is basically when you're doing your Guardian maps, you're doing your T14 to 16, you have a high Awakener level. Basically what you're seeing in the background here, you have a strong character. There's different power levels, obviously, of characters. But basically, most competent characters, whether that be a Vortex Occultist, a Totem build, Mines, anything like that, most competent characters which are well-rounded can now, at the end game, max out most map ultimatums. This is, in my opinion, where the league needs a little bit of work. Because the promise of the league is risk reward. Are you going to continue? Are you going to continue to wager that high stakes poker game? I really, really enjoyed that. I had so much fun with that. And unfortunately, the league completely loses that due to the wave cap. Also, of course, we have a ton of other things to talk about, like the Trial Master, but that itself, in every single map, I went from having a high stakes poker game to basically having a loot pinata in just a matter of items. And that was a fairly sad experience for me, because I kind of realized that the lead mechanic didn't really live up to the promise and what it advertised to me. Now, that is fine. That is completely fine. I understand that. And the solution to that, I feel like, from Grinding Gear Games was inscribed ultimatums. I've done my fair share of inscribed ultimatums. They are absolutely very high risk and very high reward. They are exhilarating, and they are challenging. They are a challenge for your character. However, they are not something that you can run all day. People had a similar problem with the 5-wave in Legion. They are also obviously this aspirational penultimate content of the league, and they do serve that purpose very well. They are that kind of ultimate risk reward, which kind of bridges the gap between the extremely powerful characters in maps and the not so powerful characters. They're good. However, I'm not satisfied. I really would like to continue to have that high stakes poker game in my maps. That made mapping very fun for me, and I want that back. I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm doing what Grinding Gear told me to do. I'm telling them what I don't like, and I really, really would like to have that back on the table. Now, there's a few things that I want to talk about with inscribed ultimatums. The first one is I don't understand why these don't drop from the ultimatums. Let's just paint a scenario. Let's say that when you fully completed your ultimatum, it always dropped an inscribed ultimatum. All right. So now the gameplay loop would, instead of being crack your loot pinata every single map and ta-da, you get your loot and that's it. Now the gameplay loop would be, oh man, I just maxed out my ultimatum. Cool, I got an inscribed ultimatum. Time to go challenge the Taskmaster in the inscribed ultimatum. I'm gonna wager this loot. I'm gonna put my character to the test. Even if it was 10 scaring orbs or 20 GCPs, that's still way more rewarding, and it actually does give you that risk reward kind of gameplay loop continues. Instead, inscribed ultimatums are a random drop from maps, and they actually cannot drop, to my knowledge, at all deterministically from the lead mechanic, which makes no sense. And it kind of really does create a disjointed gameplay loop where you have to, in fact, buy inscribed ultimatums off of other players. And I don't like buying items off other players wherever possible. I think it would be much cooler if these dropped deterministically from the content that is which you're farming. That would make a lot of sense, and it would complete the gameplay loop of risk reward that I'm looking for. That's just my take on it. Of course, the Grinding Gear is going to be the ones who come up with the solution. All right, let's move on to probably one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, with the league, and that is the new boss, the Taskmaster. So far, after completing probably north of 1,000 maps, probably more than that actually, I've encountered him twice. That is not good. He's significantly rarer than any boss in the history of PoE, in my opinion. And I've done extensive tests trying to figure out how to spawn this guy. So, I've run, what does it say here? I've run over 170 maps, in which I strategically died at certain points, to kind of, see if there is a win streak mechanic. Most players, keep in mind, don't play more than, 20 maps a day in a play session. And, most players don't even complete 100 maps a week. So I think it's fairly unreasonable to expect this boss to be so rare. Now, in my full, 175 maps or whatever I did, I think I have the exact numbers here. I can pull it up at the end here. I have encountered him 0 times. I've only died 5 times in that entire 175 maps, and that was to test the win streak mechanic. Now, there's a few trails of thought of how you may be able to influence the Trial Master to spawn. We tested these on stream. It's obviously going to be anecdotal. I don't have any data to show you on the actual first method. But the first trail of thought is that if you picked a ton of different modifiers and tried to make the difficulty as hard as possible, maybe you would get a higher average wave number, and that would be really, really awesome. Making the content harder and harder. Maybe you could push the wave number higher. Well, no, this isn't the case, unfortunately. There's no evidence to kind of support that. If you picked more different modifiers or harder modifiers, that the wave number becomes harder. You still maintain that average of around 7 at T14 plus maps. If you're curious, you're on average, you can get no lower than 6 in T14s, and most of the time you're going to get 7. The stats here are: I got 105 7s, 56 6s, 9 9s, 8 8s, and 0 10s. So that's kind of my stats over that massive sample size. And after that, I gave up because I was tired of counting and I wasn't having fun with it anymore. So that is kind of my take on the Trial Master. He is incredibly rare. He's far too rare. He might be incredibly rewarding when you do get him. Having said that, my 2 encounters with the Trial Master in the entire league, I got offered a Lycosidae, which is a tier 1 unique, I'll give him that, and half an Exalt. But the rewards aren't the problem here. The rewards are good. Ultimatum offers a good amount of currency for most players, and I think that it's fairly well positioned on the reward front. The issue is that it promises risk reward and it does not deliver on the high end, and there is no access to the new boss, which everyone was really excited about. And I think that they need to create a system or patch the system to allow us to deterministically make progress towards the boss on a map by map basis. All right. I think also, of course, this is just what I would like, is the ability to further push the risk in maps. I would like the ability to continue to wager what I have offered, and continue to potentially get rewarded, whether that be an uncapped wave system, a currency which allows you to push continual waves further and further, or something along those lines. I think would not be amiss, and it would allow players to continue to kind of push their character and advance the risk and really have a lot of fun. I think overall, the biggest complaint of this league I've seen from at least my peers is that there's not enough aspirational content. Obviously, the inscribed ultimatums are great, but purchasing them is not a fun gameplay loop, despite how risky, challenging, and fun and rewarding they may be. So overall, I would like to see them implement some sort of way to continue to push and juice up your map ultimatums. Imagine if you could push ultimatums infinitely. There would suddenly be a whole metagame around builds that could do the most amount of waves. There'd be suddenly a whole metagame about how strategically you can push the mods. Because right now, one of the big problems with the league is that you can continually pick trivial mods. Because there's only about 6 to 7 waves on average, that's basically 2 mods that you max out. And you can max out 2 mods which are trivial. So whether you're a CI build and you max out the fart cloud every single time, whether you're an AoE based build that doesn't care about ruin and you go for the hollowed drowned and the ruin every single time, you basically have no mods on there. Now, if you push that wave number much higher, say to 10 every time or 15 every time, well, suddenly you have to take very undesirable mods and the risk becomes very, very real. And of course, you'd hope the reward would also become very, very real. I think that ultimatums and maps with an uncapped wave reward limit would obviously not be anywhere near as rewarding as previous abusive mechanics like Delirium, but it would also be way more difficult, way more engaging, and way more fun. And it would also be accessible. Accessibility is a big thing in PoE, which I think is very, very cool. Imagine if anyone could go into their map and push their character to the limit every single time and have to make the decision whether they want to continue. Look at their rewards. Oh man, I'm actually getting so hyped right now, legitimately. I actually would really find that really fun, and suddenly Ultimatum would actually be my favorite league ever, as I thought it may be. Continue to keep that risk reward alive, and I will be sold on the mechanic. So very, very good. In closing thoughts, my feedback is that I would like more risk reward on the high end. I think it's perfectly balanced, pretty much all the way up until you can cap your rewards. Inscribed ultimatums, I think, should drop from the lead mechanic and continue to be part of the gameplay loop of Ultimatum. I don't think there should be a global drop. The Trial Master needs to be deterministic in some way so that people who want to engage with the new boss can do so without having to do 200 maps and maybe not even get him then, because that is really frustrating. There seems to be no way to deterministically access this boss. There's no win streaks because I strategically tested it by dying, and there's also no way to increase your chances at him by making the content more difficult. So that's going to be my review, guys. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say about the lead mechanic. I think its rewards are sufficient. I just think it fails to deliver on the promise that it had as a lead mechanic, and I think that there's a lot of potential left on the table, which can very easily be fixed by grinding gear if they choose to do so. So all that said, guys, hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.